Uh, I want to get into you've alluded to it anyway. I want to get into Behold. So both
Okay.
myself and Tyler think Behold is your best record. Well, Tyler thinks it's
Okay.
the best record ever made, and I it's not. It's pretty close. It's definitely my top 10. So, like you said with L'Oreal, it's very it's more upbeat records. Each record has its own character, but there's a real gravity to Behold. So,
Mm.
was it more intense to write, record, and as opposed to the other records that you've made?
Man, I got to think about. See, quarantine that record, did it feel different? It was one of the hardest because it was the first record I did after I was also like I am undone, and yet in Broken Voice I was pretty much doing the band full time, and whatever other jobs I did were side jobs just to go back on tour. Um, Behold, I was a pastor full time, and I was writing it in the cracks and the crevices, and so we went to studio, and I didn't have enough songs done lyrically, and I almost had like a breakdown, and thankfully, um, like Tanner and Maya and in my band, and then Goldman, who was recording, and Jason were like, "Hey, man, take your time. We'll just spend the rest of the 2 weeks we're here, and we'll make it sound awesome, and you can come back when the lyrics are written." So in that way, the lyrics are sort of always getting finished last. But like that record, literally, like the record was recorded. I think Tanner might have done some additional stuff from his little home studio as the lyrics were being finished, like to help sew some things together. Most of the rest of the records, like we've been able to sort of the record was kind of locked, like what the song sounded like. So it was emotionally one of the toughest. I was really into studying the Psalms at the time and the different types of Psalms. And like, so that was a
Mm.
guiding star. Like each of those songs is a type of Psalm. Um, and at the time, I think like Tanner had just joined the band and we wrote Broken Voice together, but it was exciting to write a full band record with him. It was exciting to write. That was our first 4-piece record. So the first two, I was the only guitarist, and we sort of held ourselves to that constraint. And for I Am Undone, we sort of threw everything in the kitchen sink because it's our first, and you never know if you're going to get to do it again. And with Yet, which is where we really got traction, it was the clarity of like, no, just the 3 instruments. Like pretty much no piano. There's like one bell part on a song, but it was like guitar, bass, drums, sometimes a baritone guitar instead of a regular guitar. No double guitars anywhere. Like if I'm playing, whatever I'm playing is the only guitar that's happened. Sometimes we double the track, but we wouldn't like write a rhythm guitar. Just be that's the guitar. And so then for Behold, it was like it was very freeing because we love a lot of really big stuff that's also ambient, stuff like Sigaros and Mogwai, and then heavy stuff like the Deftones and
Mm-hmm.
Hum, and the kind of the double guitar effect you get from a band like For This Seems Forever or even the Foo Fighters to some degree. And so it was nice to be like, okay, now we have all this stuff that we can add back in because we can execute it live. And also there was all this stuff that we liked that we didn't know how to do. And Tanner was showing up with that bag of tricks. And we're like, okay. And so, and that was also the first time where there was another person in the band who could be writing the songs like there was another primary songwriter. Tanner is also a songwriter. And so that was exciting for me. Although Tanner really quarantined himself in some ways. Like he would sit in the room and he wouldn't hold an instrument. And the other three of us would write, and he would sort of sit in the room like a producer. Like he wouldn't pick up his instrument until he would be like, "Oh, I think maybe that part could be twice as long," or "I think the next part should." He would be equally a part of the discussion of like, because we're usually talking philosophically about like what could happen next, what would feel right, but he wouldn't be offering riffs. Like he wanted the backbone of the record to be my riffs because he didn't want to be the one responsible for messing up what had gone right on Yet. And
Mm.
so, which was cool, and I appreciate it. I also was like, please give me some like I don't. I'm not trying to be the guy. Like this doesn't need to be my show. And thankfully, like when Nate joined the band later, Nate like he can't help it. Like Nate is gonna Nate. And so I've enjoyed the last couple records of like Nate bringing stuff and then it freeing up Tanner like more than ever. Like now the band is three. There's three. Nate, Tanner, and all of us write songs. So, but Behold, it was the excitement of having that, the excitement of adding all the ambient stuff, the pressure of like wearing two jobs. Um, for me, there was also a real tension that I see now in that time. Maybe that's what you're feeling of trying to still fit in. Like I was working at a church, but I was already like a very, even as a person of faith, I had already become a lot more progressive and liberal than the community that I was in. Like when I went back to that church, it was a tough thing to go back. My home church asked me to come back, and I went back because I appreciated and honored their contribution in my life. And we agreed about some really core things, obviously, but there was a lot of things we were kind of agreeing to disagree on. And so I look back and see there was a lot of tension in me about like, what record can I make that's honest, that won't be like dunking on anyone or like trying to be too angsty. Whereas like, I think I think the record would have, and I think I found it. I think I struck that balance, but it made it even harder because it was like, well, instead of just what can I write that will, and there's like, I wasn't worried about anyone being mad, but I was subconsciously like, I just love the people that are in my life. And so I'm not trying to like make anyone upset. So that was another thing of like trying to figure out how can I also not just write what's honest and all that stuff, but how can I had more clarity on, I was viewing more faces in my mind when I was like, how do I say this? Who am I imagining I want to hear this? Like maybe it was clarifying in some ways. I think about that record and I still like, we don't play a lot of that record live because, and I think it's probably one of the things that's good about it that people like. A lot of the songs are really drug out. Like all the songs are overly long, which was kind of like one of the things that we talked about in L'Oriella was like, hey, and this is a reality. When we play a set list, if we're not headlining, even if we are, we have so many of our best songs are long. And it's like, okay, well, if we play Memoir and we play Zion and we play Hail and we play Lower Still and I say anything, that's like 40 minutes. Like, and I also think like, again, like not wanting to do the same thing is like, I love Hail. I'm not going to stop playing Hail. That's one of my favorite riffs I've ever written. So what can we write this time? Like, oh, I want to write Wildflowers. Like I want to write Heavy Heart because I want to add that to when we play live, like getting to play those songs together. Like this last tour, Heavy Heart was sort of the last song before we closed with Hail. I love that, like I'm not really, there's so many things I can look back and like be like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. I mean, you make records and you grow up, like you change. So there's so much to be embarrassed about. And anytime you grow, I'm sure I will feel that way about L'Oriella in 10 years, but I can also just honor that dude and be like, yeah, Behold to me was a huge step forward into the band that we had always wanted to be. And with Yet, it was like, well, we can't do a lot of that stuff because there's just three of us. So this is the best band we can be. And I think we really felt like we took the top off. Maybe I feel like we didn't quite know how to rein it in. Maybe we accidentally made something that is the perfect thing for people because it is so long and like takes its time,
Yeah, and kind of with that, I mean, so kind of like Simon said, I'm willing to admit, and this might be pure bias in an interview with you, I don't really care, is sure. Behold is one of probably my favorite record ever.
Oh, amazing.
Straight up.
Thank you.
It genuinely is. And part of the reason for that is I like what you said about the like lyrical aspect of it. For me, that's what really struck me was, I'm sure you've probably seen it before, being in that same kind of growing up in that same field, is there is a lot of great worship music out there, but there's also a lot that just lacks that, I feel like, very real side of life of accepting doubt and frustrations and anger in your life and just being like, well, what's going on? And I think like what you said, I think really matches that well, where you kind of at the time we're studying the Psalms, and I would say it's relatively evident in the music, because I look at specifically Curse is probably my favorite song on that album.
Would have stayed to the end, wept at your feet and died by your side. Yeah.
And
oh, cool.
And part of the reason is just because it has that very real side of faith, I feel like, of, you know, kind of stepping back and being like, well, if I was in that place, I'm sure I would have done this and I'm sure I would have said this. But then, you know, you sit there and kind of realize everything that happened during the crucifixion, what happened during the resurrection, and how you kind of live from that. It's like, okay, that happened. Now what am I doing with it? And I think that's a beautiful thing. And so, kind of going with that, like you said, you know, you were studying the Psalms at the time, and that's what very much influenced Behold. But, you know, looking at, you know, each part in your life, obviously you in 2025 is very different from you in 2008 when you guys were taking care of I Am Undone and looking towards Yet. And so for you, when you look at the lyrics and kind of where you guys have come from, what sort of like things in your life and sort of experiences, whether that's studying parts of scripture or genuinely just moments in your life where you are having, you know, struggling with things and struggling with your idea of spirituality or even just struggling with everyday life, how has that influenced your lyrical storytelling throughout my epic?
That's a great question. Well, the integrity piece is huge. I mean, one of the artists that impacted me really strongly as a kid when my parents were heavily playing like Christian radio was Rich Mullins, which was became a door into like singer-songwriters, like some of the greatest singer-songwriters, like the John Prynes of the world, and like really setting a high bar lyrically. And so most of what was happening in the worship in the church world and even in the CCM world, just it this is a me thing. It just wasn't interesting to me. And like, how many times can you say I was struggling and falling beneath the waves? And it's like, dude, I don't want to throw shade at anybody. That stuff just feels like we've said that a lot. And I actually think if Jesus came back now, he would be just as revolutionary and just as progressive, and he would shock the religious people just as much as he did then. And so I always kind of viewed him as an outsider. And so I kind of felt like, I think if he came back, I think he would hear most worship songs and be like, man, you are just rewriting the same song. Like this, and I mean, all of it. It's just all is like, when people just keep rewriting the Psalms with the same lyrics, like you're still using the lion metaphor, the lamb. Like, I think it's good to re-sing the old songs, but like you're writing new songs with lion and lamb metaphors. None of you are shepherds. Like, why is that the metaphor? Like, that was the metaphors that they were grabbing because that was what was in their life. And so I think he'd be like, and I was saying this 12 years ago when we made Behold, like, I think he'd be offended. Like, you guys it's good thing you're singing the old songs, but like your new songs are still using all this old language. Like, you are not where the people are at. You are not where, like, if God is a God of truth, if he's real and if he's alive, then it ought to be like piercing. It ought to speak about like what's happening right now. Like, I have friends, God, and I love them and appreciate them, but who are like, oh, we don't need to talk about anything else but like the faith, like not politics, all that. I'm like, that's garbage. Like, if it doesn't, we don't live in a vacuum. Like, if it doesn't speak to all this stuff, and Jesus was a person who spoke to all the stuff in his world. He was a revolutionary. There's a reason Rome put him to death. So I've kind of always felt like it was my job to try to always dig for not new, because no one reinventing the wheel. You're all standing on shoulders, but there's that feeling when you're writing a song and you just say it a little bit different. And I think the word is fresh. And I think art is always supposed to be fresh. And if it's fresh, then it can be timeless, if that makes sense. If it's fresh, it can be timeless. And I just found a lot of it to be like, it was, to me, like I've done a few times, like people have asked me to do, and this is totally my opinion and I could totally be wrong, but a few people have asked me, oh, will you do like, will you give like writing advice or writing production or whatever? I'm not good at it because I really only know how to write errands, like my epic songs. Literally, I couldn't write a song that didn't sound like my epic song. And I couldn't write a song that's not personal. Anytime someone wants me to help, I don't know how to help other than like just writing, you know? But when I do, a lot of times, like I had a friend and he showed me a song he was working on. And I was like, oh, that line, this one line is great. And he hasn't really put much out yet. And it is a great line. I'm really proud of him for it. I was like, now I would keep working until every line in that song was as good as that line to me. And I would put in the time and I would wait. And from what I read of other, you know, of great accomplished artists, of which I am not, like writers and filmmakers, sometimes you have a breakthrough and it comes fast, but that's the exception. And that usually happens after, like, because you've done so much work, like because you put in the hours. And so there's the labor there of just that's remained consistent, like waiting and digging and chipping away at the stone until it is special. And understanding, like my partner and I always say, like it takes quantity to get quality. You cannot decide when you're going to write something great. You could just write a lot of stuff. And I think what makes great artists is A, they're willing to do that work. And then B, they actually have a filter that's good enough to know when they made something special. Like they go, okay, this kind of hit the bar. And every time we make a record, dudes, I'm like afraid I've lost it, like maybe I got lucky every other time, and then when something good happens and I know it, I'm like, that's the first time. Okay. I didn't lose it. My taste is still, you're always trying to, Ira Glass, who's the host of This American Life. He has this great, is from his podcast, but it's gone viral and you can look it up. But he talks about how the tough thing when you start making art is at first your taste is good. That's why you want to make music. Like you like Radiohead, and Radiohead is brilliant. But then you make your first song and it doesn't sound anything like your Radiohead because you have no idea how to do that. And so the tough thing is it takes so long to close the gap between your taste and your ability. But if you keep working at it, and if you're gifted and blessed, whatever terms you want to use, eventually you start to close that gap a little bit, or at least you close that gap in the way that you can. Like, oh, I can't be Radiohead. I think a lot of times, like I can't be any of the artists that inspired me. I can't be the Deftones. I can't be Sigur Rós. And I can't be Further Seems Forever. And I can't be so many other bands. But I try to be all those artists and Imogen Heap and Phoebe Bridgers, whatever. And I miss. And what I land on is me. Like everyone is inspired by artists. And thankfully, none of us quite know how to sound like the ones we want to. And so we accidentally become ourselves. So did that fully answer your question, Tyler? I don't know if I nailed it.
Yeah, I mean, no, I definitely, I mean, just that idea of, I don't know, at the end of the day, it's sticking true to yourself. Like you said, I love what you said just at the beginning of, I don't know, just kind of being real about it. Like you said, we don't live in a vacuum. And I feel like that gets lost a lot is, we can treat it as this is just what we live in and this is just us. And it's like, no, it's not just you. And if it was just us, then the whole purpose of our faith would not be a thing.
Right. And I don't mean this word actually in a spiritual or churchy sense. I think it's an issue of stewardship, whether you think that talents are God-given or the universe, whatever you want to call it, or that you just have, you can, so you should. But I view it as like, I can. And I feel, and I obviously have a strong opinion about that. And so I want to make good with what I have, like I want to do the best I can because that's an opportunity. I'm so thankful. Like, and I view that everything that way. Like the time I have with my daughter, like I'm so blessed, lucky, thankful, whatever word you want to say, to have a daughter. I want to do what I know is the best to be a dad to her. My wife, I feel the same way. My business today, we just shot all day today. Like I'm with dudes that I love. We're working hard for a client. It's like, well, we're here and we have this opportunity. So how can we like make the most of it or be faithful, whatever language you want to use? Like, I'm a tremendously optimistic, posy person. I just, even now, like when we went and did some shows last month or this month and did some time in studio working on new music for a new record. And part of me, besides that it went well, besides that I connected with lots of fans, and besides that I got to see some of my favorite dudes and play together, and it felt so freaking good. And almost nothing obviously like my wife and my daughter and there's some things, but there's very little that feels that good or better than that. But on top of that, when it's done, I also feel this very cosmic sense of like, oh, I did one of the things that I'm supposed to do. Like whether or not we're successful or make money, well, I'm just thankful that the tour worked out. Like, it's like, oh yeah, I didn't waste that thing,